Hey everyone, and welcome to the People's Health Alliance, for the people, by the people, empowering people over their own health and well-being. My name's Shirley Blanch, and today I am really delighted to be joined by the wonderful Judith Clark from Recovery Reset. Judith is an addiction specialist and kinesiologist, and she's going to be sharing with us today her story about how she got into that, the book that she's written to help other people as well. And we're going to be talking a lot about agoraphobia, which is something you don't hear about too much. So stay tuned, because I think it's going to be really, really interesting. Judith, welcome to the People's Health Alliance.
Thank you, Shirley. It's great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
So this is something I'm really fascinated in, because agoraphobia, I think most people think about it as, fear and anxiety about leaving the house. That's probably as much as most people know about it. But you actually come from lived experience, don't you? So can you give us a little bit about your background and how this all started for you?
Yeah, so I'm English, and then when I was 14, I went to live in Australia with my parents, which I think is part of the issue. Um, at 14, I was fine. At 16, I wasn't fine. What does that mean? What does it mean to be an agoraphobic? Um, it means that every second of your day is completely immersed in anxiety. So there's no free moment where you can breathe, basically, or hear, see, feel. You're absolutely contained with trying to keep a lid on what you constantly feel is going to emerge. That therefore being panic attack, anxiety, inability to cope. So inability to cope for me started. I was living in a place called the Blue Mountains in Australia. It was a 2 hour train ride down to the city for me to go to work. And one morning I got to the station, which would usually be about 5 in the morning. Train pulled in, and just for some reason, which I did not have any clue why, I couldn't get on that train. I I simply was unable to get on the train, and you think that, what's that, you know? Anyway, so I went home because I had to do something, and so therefore the next day, tried to go get on the train, same thing. So there was, I think, a day at some point when I did manage to get myself down to work, and when I was at work, this huge wave of, again, panic. I say panic, but I didn't know it was panic. I didn't know what panic was. I was just overwhelmed by heart racing, by feeling I'm going to faint, feeling I need to get out of here, wherever here was. And I need to run, and I need to get away, because there was something incredibly dangerous and life
Mm,
threatening about
mm,
that moment in time. And I didn't understand. So I then didn't go to work. I then went to the doctors. The doctors said, "Oh, you know, you've probably got a heart problem," which of course that really helped the
wow.
anxiety. Um, you know, and then it was, well, actually, you probably need to see a psychiatrist. So off you go there. And it's like, so all of these, none of these things were particularly helpful. And nobody said the word to me, agoraphobia, not the psychiatrist, not the GP, not the heart specialist, not anyone. And so for me in that world at that time, I was locked in this space that was such a nightmare that I wanted every day to go to sleep so I didn't have to, so I could escape, so I could feel it. But then I was so afraid to go to sleep because the next morning I was going to wake up. And I was going to wake up feeling exactly the same, because it never went. It wasn't sort of a, you get a few days where you're all right, and then it's sort of triggered by something, and then you're okay again. Nothing like that. It was a constant. And I didn't know what it was. Nobody else seemed to know what it was. But I knew that I was going to die. That's what I felt like. So I then started obviously eliminating the things that seemed to kind of bring on even further this level of anxiety. So I'd stop walking to the shop, I'd stop going out the door, I'd stop answering the phone, I'd stop. So it's a gradual retreat.
Because
Now
I'm guessing if you've got a fear and something, you're thinking, well, it's something outside, so I need to control as much of that environment as I can, because if I've got these threats, and because there was nothing specific that you could put your finger on that had triggered this, I guess you just felt, well, I need to try and control as much of my environment as possible, and that means having as little interaction with things that can cause me stress or things that might be a threat. Because it seems like your whole sort of threat response is on overdrive at that point.
Yeah. So, even the process of trying to go to sleep, even that was fraught with, as you relax and your breathing slows and you feel just like a huge reaction to wake up because you're dying, because well, you may be dying. So this got to obviously to the point where you retreat further and further, and a lot of agoraphobics retreat into one room. I
Wow.
actually managed to maintain sort of the house as such, and then I realized. So then of course you one of the worst things, if you like, is the people around you. Some are concerned, some aren't concerned in my family anyway, and you're trying to understand this story about yourself that feels so overwhelming that there's no way out. There's no way out of here because where is the way out? Unless you control every single thing around you all the time. And of course, that doesn't work. We all know we can't do that really, but that's what you think. But what there's a shame in there, I think, that a lot of people don't talk about in any kind of mental illness, anxiety related, depression, otherwise, certainly in agoraphobia, because, you in Australia, I just have to explain, in Australia, your letterbox is at the end of the garden, which is therefore not your front door. So to go to get your post, you have to go out. So I couldn't go to get the post, certainly not easily. And so when you're then saying to your parents, as I was living with them, oh, no, I can't go and do that. It sounds ridiculous. I understand, and I understood then it sounds ridiculous to people. And the shame in that of, it's like, well, the common response is, of course, well, just go and do it. Nothing's going to happen. What's going to happen to you between there and the post box, for goodness sake? Well, yes, I understand that, but I still can't do it.
So there's a difference, isn't there, I think, between understanding something intellectually and having a concept of, I understand from an intellectual perspective that nothing's going to happen, but having this real visceral fear that just completely overwhelms you, that even though you may understand it rationally, you can't overcome that because it's something almost so innate within you that's protecting you, and you're going into complete survival. Would
Yeah,
that be fair to assess it in that
that
way?
sounds, yeah, absolutely. And so the threat when you're living in that, we talk about the threats, like the threat became, as I touched on, like the telephone. The threat is um, if you do, get yourself up to the shop and you're waiting in line to get your shopping through the teller rather. Um, if there's anything, if you're not first and you can just go and do it and go straight through, if there's anything that stops you, That's a problem, and a really big problem in that at times I've just put my things down on the floor and walked out. Now, to the outsider, that looks like a completely strange thing to do. But over the time, I realized that there's a couple of main things that go along with this. As we develop, if you like, we talk about a safety blanket with children. The agoraphobic develops a safety blanket, and that safety blanket can be a person and it can be a car. So the agoraphobic can't go on public transport because it's they, she, he, they're not in control of it. But a car, obviously you've got more control of. And then if you've got a person in the car that's your safety blanket, you've sort of got some element of, well, I can work with it. But the key thing is that whatever you're involved with, there's nothing in the way that stops you getting back to your safety. So going out for dinner, for instance, you couldn't do. Because if you started to feel overwhelmed, panicky, probably you're not wanting to just get up and go out, especially if the people you're with have got no idea what that is. You can't, I used to count the ways, the roads which the car would go down and work out how many hospitals were in reach, just in case. So the whole planning thing has to happen. The whole ability to have a retreat position back to your safety, therefore usually your house. If you went shopping with your safety blanket, let's say a person in a department store, you couldn't let that person out of your sight. If they walked around the corner into a different area of the shop and you missed that, then you would be straight into panic. So yeah, it's a continuous way of survival, as you said. That's what it feels like.
Is there a link, and I'm just sort of speaking completely as a layperson here because I don't know anything about it. Is there a kind of an overlap with something like OCD where you're sort of trying to control your environment and you're doing certain things? Is there an element of that where you do things in a certain way because, again, it's sort of protective of you and this perceived threat that you have?
Yes, so it's creating safety. So it's about, for OCD, it's often about, if I do this the right way and I ensure it's the right way, then I will be fine. But if I go away and I'm not absolutely 100% certain, and I probably may not be, I'll have to come back and check until the element of anxiety has been, supported. Yeah. So all of these things, in my experience, are hugely around. They're around two things for me. They're about control, and they're about triggers. Now, I've not touched on what those triggers are yet, because you have to get well in agoraphobia, you have to search for the triggers. And that's a hard job. And it's only, most people will go along and they'll go to a GP and they'll be probably offered, well, if not the psychiatrist and the heart specialist, they'll probably offered CBT and some other talking therapies and maybe some SSRIs to counter what may be some element of depression that people are seeing. I mean, it is depressing. It's depressing that you feel as a person you can't do anything at all.
Of course.
And that there's no answer to that. It's like of the old thing of, if you break your leg, everyone's going, oh, how terrible, I hope we sit down. You don't look like there's anything wrong with you.
So you got to a point, how long were you in that situation for? You were 16 when it started, and how long would you say this went on for until you started to maybe see some change or get some help, and what did that look like?
Yeah. So I would classify myself as essentially a housebound agoraphobic for 5 years. So that's like, what's that?
Wow.
21, 22, 23. Now, what I did do in that time, the things, in my opinion, that saved me, and they're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's that whole idea, as your platform uh, talks about, that everybody has their own pathway out of this. I can
Yeah.
only share mine, and
Yeah.
it's not a usual one. So I started, I did, yeah. So I actually started having some hypnotherapy, but I had past life hypnotherapy.
Oh, interesting. I know someone that does that. It's
Yeah,
fascinating.
it is fascinating. And I did some what they called orthomolecular nutrition. So basically just very high doses of vitamins, minerals, and so on. Not normal levels. Not, the GP wouldn't say, you would say you don't need that.
Mm.
Ridiculous. Um, I did that. And I also started my own spiritual journey, which is
Okay.
essential. And the hypnotherapy and the spiritual journey go together. And what I discovered, the hypnotherapy felt like a doorway just into a different world, because what it gave me was the experience of heading backwards into what I believe to be other lives, in which I had experiences that I could see completely align with why I feel how I feel as an agoraphobic. And as I sat and experienced, and the important bit is experience, not just thought of or saw
Mm. Mm.
or in on a head level, met. I felt
Mm.
the emotional impact of those things that happened in that life.
Mm.
So in the session, I would be crying and I would be angry
Mm.
and I would be all the things that were there. And just a
Mm.
really clear example, for instance, and there was a few of these types of things, but just so you can see the connection. One of those experiences was I was a nun in. I can only sort of put the picture to you of being like in a Mexican town, with the tower and the
Mm.
heavy religious sort of impact,
Mm.
hot, dusty, and I saw myself as was um, walling up a child
Oh my
as a
goodness.
punishment.
Wow.
When you think, hang on, I've got sort of walls here
Yeah.
that I put myself in that I don't understand.
Yeah.
And I see things like that. I helped, and every time I connected with one of those instances, almost immediately it felt like a very physical feeling of, if you had heavy chains wrapped around, it felt like you were cutting the links and they were falling off.
Wow.
So obviously that was it, it was amazing in a lot of ways. But because I was doing my own spiritual journey, I never got into blame. I never got into hating myself. I never got into, to me, this was all very clearly um, a journey that I was learning through, and,
Mm.
and that we're all in the right place at the right time, learning what we need to learn. So, I mean, that was sort of one instance. And I remember also when I had to go to school, because I had bits of this before the 16. I remember getting on the school bus and thinking, well, what what happens if I come home and, like, no, they've all gone, as in family?
Mm.
I had that sense of insecurity.
Wow.
It wasn't going to stay. It wasn't going to be
Yeah.
there. So, in the past life, that connected to a life where I was held prisoner in a Japanese camp.
Wow.
And in that camp, I can remember they put me and obviously others in a like a pit where we
Wow.
wasn't quite big enough, so you were constantly, you know, uncomfortable with bars across the top, so the heat came in
Right.
and the rain and the whatever came in. So, but the point being that when that life ended and I did survive and returned, my whole street where I'd lived and obviously my community had just been flattened in the bombing.
Right. Okay. So
So
that kind
again, you
of
can see
provides a
these
link.
connections.
So
Yeah.
so you went and you started a few different things. So you did the nutrition, you did the hypnotherapy, which was really beneficial. How did you end up then finding kinesiology? How did you end up sort of helping other people? Was it just a natural progression that the way, as you developed things more and more yourself, you wanted to help other people? What happened there? Because it's a big jump, isn't it, to go from being housebound
Yeah.
agoraphobic to then, being a therapist and an addiction specialist
Yeah.
and developing this whole protocol.
Yeah. So I actually started my own counselling service back in the 80s in Australia. And I was having people come to me who had um, sort of alcohol problems mainly, but other drug problems now and then. Although at that time I wouldn't really have even known what they were, you know. And at one point I thought, I really don't understand enough about this to be particularly helpful. So I took myself off and I did 2 years of drug and alcohol at the local college. And within that, he did placements. So I went off to a rehab placement. So, as a member of staff for a number of weeks. And I requested from my teacher, whatever you do, don't send me to a rehab. I don't want to go to a rehab. I don't like heroin and drugs. I'm not going there. It's full with mad people and, it's going to be horrible. And I can't cope. Anyway, so guess where I get to go? Straight. Go there, do not pass, go, and, whatever. So off I went. And I remember pulling up there one day, and it was a community house, and it was a rehab, but it was in a residential street. And as I pulled up, everyone that was in treatment, residential treatment, was sitting on the front steps. It's like, oh my
Mm.
God, I felt so intimidated. But I went in,
Mm.
and within a couple of weeks, my tutor in the rehab, the woman who was running it, said, we're going to restructure this whole place. We're going to have 3 sections. You, Judith, you're going to go and look after the initial intake people. Then there's a secondary and a third level. So I want you to write a 6-week program and work out what you're going to do with these people to get them ready to come to the second stage. And it was like,
Wow.
hello.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Anyway, so I thought, well, I'm just going to have to start doing, like, what do I know? I only
Mm.
know what I've learned and what I've had to understand. So I just started doing some board work, obviously some workshops and some group work, but they were all based on my own experience. So, and they were good. So that was great. Everybody seemed to enjoy them, and they actually achieved what the rehab needed to achieve. So I did that for a while, and then I came over to the UK, and I went to work at the Maudsley in London, and I worked there for a while. And I tried out some of these things again, and great. So anyway, so I sat down. I was actually married at that time. I'd brought an Australian over to England, and we wrote this program. We called it initially Beyond Limitation, but it still is, I guess, but we actually renamed it to Beyond Addiction because we were working in the addiction field. So So the benefit of the Beyond Addiction was that my understanding from my own recovery was, and again with that hypnotherapy, is you can do all the talking therapy you like. You can do all the understanding you like. You can do all the, making the cognitive sort of decisions and affirmations to change this and to change that. If you have got inside you, whether it's past life or not, I'm not sort of saying, but what I am saying is that when we all go through life, we all bury emotional distress. We bury it and we carry on, and we keep doing that, and we keep doing it, and we do it, and we end up with this toxic energy that presents, if you like, in my mind, as like boils inside that's holding these energies, and that constantly is sort of infiltrating into your systems with this negativity and this old programming and this old fear and this old experience. So if you want to change, because in addiction treatment, we do a lot on attitude and behaviors, and we do a lot of work on that. So attitudes and behaviors are about coming from the outside. So they're looking at, what you do, what you say, what you're talking about, what you change. It's outside in. It's like an onion, basically. You can do that, and most rehabs just do that. Beyond Addiction goes to the very center and uses meditation visualizations, specific ones that I've written, to access those hidden emotional drivers that are sitting there inside you. And we need to lance those. We need to open them up and allow that toxicity to come out. And then what you'll have in the last instance of that is that whatever that situation is, it'll still be there, obviously, because it's our experience, but it will be healed. It'll be like a scar or a boil that you have lanced and has a scar, but there's nothing inside it that's toxic. You know it, you experienced it, you've gone on a journey with it, you've probably come to some acceptance and forgiveness with it. And when you do that, that pushback against all this change that you want to put in stops. So that newness can settle.
You've kind of got to have a bit of a clear out, haven't you? You've got to clear out some of the old stuff to let the new stuff in. I love the fact that you do guided meditations and visualizations for that, because I do. That's kind of my day job as well. I do, and I think it is really, really powerful stuff, and people don't always realize how powerful it is. So this is kind of leads quite nicely onto kinesiology, doesn't it? Because that is. Yep. For people that have never heard of kinesiology before, can you just give a quick overview of what it is, how you can use it in this sort of situation?
So I find kinesiology absolutely amazing. I've used it through my life for me. I used to see chiropractors all the time, and I would just be going back for readjustment for the same thing. And I found that kinesiology can fix the problem, if you like, that I go with, but it fixes so many other things at the same time because it's an energy system. So with kinesiology comes from, the word kinetic. It's about energy, it's about movement. So kinesiology joins things like, probably based more in traditional Chinese medicine. So it's about 3,000 years old, works with meridians, that type of thing. But it joins the East with the West. So we're taking the Eastern bases, and then we're joining it with the West as in manual muscle testing. So your body, my body, tested the right way, can tell me and tell the therapist what it needs fixed. Does it need this meridian worked on? Does it need that one? If there's 3 that it needs, it can tell it which is the priority. And if you fix that priority, it will fix all the others. kinesiology, so it works very physically. In that, if you've got that sore knee, that sore back, that sore elbow that never seems to really go away, your body's telling you something. Your body's saying, I've got this stuff stuck here, and I'm trying to tell you because I'm hurting, and all you're doing is giving me paracetamol. And I want you to listen to why I'm holding this, so the body can tell us that. So we can use kinesiology to see where the weaknesses are and rebalance the energies, like chi, as they call it. And we can rebalance, therefore, muscle systems that are along those particular lines and influence the balance of a health of organ systems. So it's back to that sort of general natural health space where everything's connected. The body can tell us what it needs to be done, but what it can also tell us when we're thinking about these things, these hidden energy centers that we need to move. If we use our muscle testing, we can have the body tell us, what's the origin of this pain that's still in my elbow? Is it a relationship issue? Is it a work issue? What is the emotion that I'm holding, and what is the situation, or what is the the damage, maybe some trauma that I'm still holding. And it can identify. We can then find out, what age. It might tell us, oh yes, this is to do with it's emotional. It's to do with your family. It's to do with this particular person. So the person's on the bed, and they're thinking all this through because we're analysing this as we go. And the muscle will tell us, for instance, was it when between the ages of 10 and 20, 20, 30. So we can get to a point where we can identify what the body's holding and what it needs to fix it. So it might need the meridians energized, but it may need certain nutrition. We can use nutrition and test against the muscle to see if it benefits, if it becomes strong, if there's a relevance. So basically it's saying, I need some, vitamin C to help me here. So we can do all the rebalance and we can get it all strong again. We can identify which nutrition, and we can also identify things like for the emotions. We'd look at bark flower remedies as well.
So it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, you can make up all these sort of stories in your head and you can be thinking all things through, but really your body doesn't lie. Your muscles aren't lying. So all the stories that you're saying kind of go out the window, don't they? And you're sort of bypassing that. And you're getting to the root cause, and you're getting to the part that just won't lie and will be able to reveal to you. Because you said earlier that one of the big problems with dealing with things like agoraphobia is finding the trigger. So finding the triggers that you have. So would you say kinesiology is a really good way of helping people find out what their triggers are?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't have that facility when I was obviously in my illness, so to speak. But it's a shorthand, but at the same time, it's a very deep dive that the body's telling you. So it's not your conscious mind. We can, as I say, talking therapists, we can talk all day, but I'm only going to tell you really mostly from my conscious mind. That's all what we're going to be using. Just a very basic, simple kinesiology test is that you can test the muscle, and I can get you to tell me your name, and you'll tell me your name, and it'll stay strong. Then I'll say, right, I'm going to ask you the same question, but lie to me. So you give me a different name. And your muscle will just collapse because your body reacts. It is not
fascinating
healthy and strong in, in what isn't authentic and what isn't true.
So it sounds like you combine a lot of different things. Yeah. Sorry, you go ahead.
Yes. No, sorry, and that is why so Recovery Reset and Kinesiology, which is the Facebook page. I do a lot of sort of posts on trying to help people understand the connections between all of these things. But it's actually quite hard to get that message across, I think, at times.
Well, because there's been such an emphasis on talking therapies, I think, that really, I mean, I think more people are becoming aware now that, the body does keep the score and we do hold on to things physically. But I think there was almost such a focus on, well, if it's anything to do with mental health, then it's just got to be the mind and we're only going to focus on that. That it sort of took, it broke down that whole mind-body connection again, and people were sort of disregarding that whole mind-body connection. So I love the fact that the kinesiology really sort of brings that mind-body connection in, and that's part of what you offer. Now, you have written a book as well, haven't you, if people want to find out more about and does this outline the sort of the protocols that you used for yourself and that you would use with your clients?
Yeah, so Recovery Out in the Open is the name of the book, but the reason I wrote it was when I was in that space. Like, as I say, I have no idea what was happening. But when I think back about it now, the most scary thing is nobody else knew. But at the same time, you can't express it because, as I say, it's like, how do you say I can't do that? It just sounds, there doesn't seem to be any credence for it whatsoever. But so I wanted to write something that helped, whether it be the person themselves, the family members, to understand this is, how limiting this is, and how to let go of the shame, and also even so in my career, quite early on when I came back to England, I went and worked for an NGO, which was a counselling NGO in London. And I set up a new service, again, using the Beyond Audition. But there was one day, this is interesting, I find, one day. So with my safety, I'd bought a car and I'd worked out, I go this way, that way, that way. So I know what I'm doing and I'm not going to get caught out. Because one thing I can't do is go on public transport. Not anywhere, especially not in London.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I thought, right, I'm fine. Anyway, in the first week, my car broke down.
Oh, no.
So
that was your safety blanket had gone.
Am I going to get, yeah. So I'm just not going to work because I can't go to work.
Yeah.
So the next day I got to work and the director gave me real dressing down and not getting into work. And what surprises me is I'm working in the mental health field. This is a mental health organisation.
Wow, yeah.
I couldn't own it, and I couldn't say I have this. And and I was in my 30s, and I thought, God, that is really, really terrible. But shows, I'm sure if I said whatever, no. I've never met a mental health professional, and I know quite a few that knows what it is. That's even today.
Wow.
And that's why I wrote the book, because you shouldn't have to be so alone.
Yeah, definitely. So you've got a Facebook group, you've written a book, you've obviously got your practice as well. If people want to find out more about this subject and they want to find out more about what you do, you offer workshops and things, I think, as well, don't you? Where can they find out more about what it is that you do, Judith? Because it sounds like such an amazing resource for anybody. And I would imagine as well, after the whole COVID thing, that probably exacerbated agoraphobia in a way as well, because it's sort of reinforcing that the outside world is dangerous, so I do wonder if that's if you've noticed that had much of an impact as well, because I certainly think in my own life I know people who was sort of, it took them a long time to actually step outside the door and they didn't suffer with agoraphobia. These were just people that had never had anything like that before. So I should imagine that your service is very well needed.
Yeah, and just sorry. So anybody can reach me at my website, which is www.recoveryreset.co.uk. That's the actual website. There's also a phone number there. If anybody wants to ring me, they're quite happy. I'm happy to speak to anybody. And the Facebook page is Recovery Reset and Kinesiology. I would just like to say one of the things that we do offer is, well, we have to kind of arrange, obviously, when we've got enough people, is we do weekends.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's actually, we're only doing a day at the moment, a day for friends and family of people who are addicted. They may or may not be in treatment, but understanding the treatment process is really important. Understanding what happens in a rehab and why things are the way they are, and what the challenges are. What does recovery mean? Recover, what is that? And why does it go on forever? What are they talking about? I've been here 3 months, well, let me go.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we do those, and you'll see that on the website as well. So, but the COVID thing, definitely, so many examples of people sort of experiencing that. And I think it comes down to that, like I was saying at the beginning, how you retreat in your safety. And when you've been told for all that time, 2 years, whatever it was, you're not safe outside. You're not safe being with anybody. You're not safe, anything to do with other people or to do with going out. And I think that can actually bring on a lot of sort of anxiety, agoraphobic tendencies. If you had tendencies before, definitely.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Thank you so much for your time today. I found it absolutely fascinating. So would you say that you deal mainly with sort of addiction now, or is it do you sort of specialize in agoraphobia, or would you say that it's mainly the majority of the work that you do is in with addiction?
So the addiction, I guess I should make it clear, the addiction I deal with is very specific. So I deal with people post-treatment.
Right.
So I'm not dealing with chaotic using.
Right.
People need to have been somewhat into their journey in a controlled place first.
Right.
Because what I'm doing with people is they've had their treatment, they've got some element of sobriety, they've been clean for however long. But life is life, and life comes along, and no matter how much you've sort of done recovery, whatever, you then end up in a place that's full of trauma, full of and you're struggling. Your relapse potential has risen. So what I deal with is I take people and we look at the place they're at now. We look at the tools they learned in treatment and how we re-energize those, as well as using the kinesiology for what's underneath as well. And we keep them on the road, if that makes sense. And because when you do leave treatment, people think if they need support or need counselling, a lot of therapists or counsellors have no idea what happens in a treatment centre. They don't understand the program and what someone's saying to them.
Yeah, and that's why your background is so useful. Having sort of worked in that environment. I think it's fascinating what you do. I love the fact that you incorporate the kinesiology into it. I think that's such an important aspect, which is something that other people aren't necessarily doing in these programs. So obviously what you're doing is really, really valuable. I'm so grateful for your time. And if people want to read your book, Recovery Out in the Open, where can they get that? Is that through your website, or can they, where can they find that?
No. So just if they just put that in, it'll come up on Amazon, it'll come up on Waterstones, it'll come up on the publisher's site, which is Austin Macaulay in London. If you put it in there, it'll just show up. We have many options to buy it.
Perfect, because I think that would be so useful for people. You've been really generous with your time today. So yeah, go and check out the website. We'll put links into that. Facebook group as well, and people can go and find out more about what you do. And also you're on the Practitioners website as well with the PHA, so people can go and check out your practitioners listing there. Any last little words you'd like to leave, any little bit of advice, if you could sort of go back and give yourself a bit of advice when you were going through that time, what would it be maybe?
Do you know what it would have to be? It would have to be, don't be scared of yourself, because people don't do that inner journey because they're afraid of what they're going to find, and they're afraid of, well, it feels a bit out of control. But just remember, you've already been there. You already know it because you've already hidden it, and you survived it. But we just need to work on it. We need to bring it out and celebrate the whole of you, not just the bit you're allowing out. That's not good. We want all of you.
Oh, I absolutely love that. I think that's a perfect way to finish today. Thank you so much for your time, Judith. It's been so great to speak to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. I've enjoyed it.
And thanks everyone for listening. I hope you found that really useful and really insightful, and you've learned a little bit more about agoraphobia and kinesiology today. I look forward to catching up with you again soon. In the meantime, do take care. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.